Chapter 18. Birth. "Gracie!" Eiko cried as she ran to her rat's side, with the other two rats not far behind. Johnny hurriedly tried key after key until he found the right one, throwing them carelessly aside once the door was unlocked, and they landed with a loud metallic clatter as they hit the concrete floor. Hands freezing from the momentary contact with the ice on the bars as he pushed open the cell door, he first went to Precious, who was still standing placidly with her eyes closed. He reached for his braid and untied it from her neck with trembling fingers. The untying of his hair broke the enchantment, and instantly Precious was free. "Daddy!" Precious cried and hugged him fiercely, soaking him almost to the skin where his cloak was opened at the front. Johnny didn't care. He embraced her just as fiercely, soaking her wet feathers and all. "God, is she getting so big?" he marveled as they let go of each other. It was true. In her dragon form she was now as big as a mule. She'd done quite a lot of growing lately. Even in her girl form she had shot up 3 inches over the past 8 months. "How's Gracie?" Johnny asked as Eiko carefully picked her up and tried to examine her in the uncertain light. Precious sniffed at the rat and whined. "Alive and unconscious as far as I could tell in this light," Eiko answered with her brows creased in worry. "We will need to get back to our ship so we can treat—" "Oh, no, Jonathan, how far apart are they?" Eiko came swiftly to Johnny's side, and with the other 2 rats following at her heels. Johnny was clutching his belly and grimacing in pain. He hissed and did his best to breathe through it, leaning on Precious for support. "His water broke when we came in," Goldie said to Eiko as she shivered. "If we don't hurry, we're going to be stuck here for a while." "No," Johnny groaned. "It will pass in a minute. I can walk." Eiko watched the 2 wet rats shivering on the floor as she shivered too. She looked at the damp state of Johnny's clothes and the ice crystals melting on Precious's feathers. Even with the demon gone, the building seemed to radiate the cold it had absorbed from it. Eiko wondered if they were going to get hypothermia if they stayed much longer. She eyed Precious and Johnny, noticing just how big the young dragon had gotten. "If you need to get out of here," Eiko said through chattering teeth as she held Gracie close to her body and wrapped her in her cloak to give her what warmth she could. "Maybe if we don't get caught. It's too cold and we're wet. Precious, do you think you can carry him now? We'll be able to move him a lot faster if you can." "Carry, Daddy?" Precious said in wondering surprise. The idea that she might be big enough to finally carry her chosen rider hadn't occurred to her. "But I can't fly him. I'm still too little." "You don't need to fly him," Eiko said as she patted Precious's neck. "Just carry him on your back so he can get back to the truck." "No," Johnny protested as the contraction receded, and he gently pushed himself away from Precious's shoulder, finally able to stand on his own again. "I can walk. I'm way too heavy for her. She's still too small to take my weight, and there's even more of me the last time she had to try." "The more you move around, the faster the baby will come out," Eiko insisted. "She can help." "I can do it!" Precious said. She swelled with stubborn pride and held up her head high. Johnny sighed. He knew that look, and if he didn't at least let her try, it would sting her pride and make her cry. And Eiko was right. This wasn't a good place for the baby to be born, and moving around a lot really would make things worse. He would only slow everyone down if he remained on foot anyway. "All right, just this once, but if I'm hurting you, let me know and I'll get off." "I don't care," Precious said, practically dancing with excitement as melting rainwater continued to drip off her in slow rivulets. She backed away, shook herself vigorously to get as much of the water off as she could. Then she came forward and lay down on the floor and waited patiently for Johnny to mount. "I do," Johnny said. Then with Eiko's one-armed help, he managed to swing a leg over and settled himself down on her back. "Hang on, Daddy," Precious cautioned as she got gracefully to her feet, straining only a little bit under her rider's weight. Johnny smiled with relief when he could see and feel that his dragon was having no trouble carrying him. Automatically, he hung on with his legs and made sure that his spine was aligned with Precious's so he wouldn't unbalance her. He didn't ride horses often, but he was a competent rider, and this felt little different. Precious craned her head around to look up at him and grinned with her pointy teeth, and Johnny smiled back. "Okay, let's go," Eiko said as they proceeded back the way they had come. It turned out that riding Precious was indeed a practical solution. They were able to move more swiftly, not having to stop and let Johnny rest when he was having a contraction. He had to watch his head going through doorways, and it took a moment for Precious to figure out how to go downstairs with a load on her back. She came up with the solution of going down tail first, so she would have more secure footing. They encountered a few bodies in some of the hallways on the way to the ground floor. The sight and smell of ripped up and half-eaten corpses was horrific. At last they came to the front entrance of the prison and were out the door. The rain had not stopped, but it had lightened up a bit. Crack! Boom! In the flash of light, Johnny saw the old beat-up delivery truck they were all headed for. The sign read, "Our Lady of Strays Delivery Service." "You stole a delivery truck from the shelter?" Johnny said incredulously. "Only borrowed it." Eiko smiled wickedly at him as she opened up the back with a set of keys. "Someone left the keys in the ignition with the doors locked and the corner window cracked. It was easy to push it open enough for Rosie to get in and lock the door." Precious lowered herself to the ground so Johnny could dismount. Then she picked up the rats and placed them into the cargo area, and then helped Johnny into the truck before eagerly jumping in herself. Eiko slammed the door shut and went into the driver's seat. In a moment she had the engine running, the heaters blowing on their highest setting, and then they were on their way back to the clinic. "Who hit you?" growled Precious as Aiko drove the truck through the pouring rain. She reached out and gently touched his bruised right jaw. Johnny winced and pushed her hand away. "It doesn't matter anymore. He's dead." A teeny rumbling noise boiled up from somewhere inside Precious, and fire erupted from her nostrils. Only it wasn't fire, though it looked like fire. The magic floated through the space between them and landed on Johnny's injured jaw, sinking into it. It was hot, almost too hot, but it felt wonderful. It was hard to tell who looked more surprised about what just happened, as the heat faded from his face. "What did you do?" Johnny asked as he touched his now painless jaw. "How long have you been able to do that?" "I just loved you and hated to see you hurt," Precious replied, looking thoughtful and confused. "It just sort of came out of me. Your bruise is all gone." "You're amazing," Johnny told her with a proud smile. He never heard of a dragon capable of healing magic, but Precious had always been a little different. "Think you could, to do that again for Gracie?" Precious whined in distress as she watched her father pant and grimace. She hated seeing him like this. She didn't know how to help him and didn't want to leave his side. She noticed that the contractions were getting closer together and becoming more painful. "We'll stay with her," Goldie said to her, catching on to the dragon's reluctance to move. "Go see if you can fix Gracie." "Oomph," Precious answered the rat trustingly, and carefully maneuvered herself in the cargo area to stick her head over Aiko's shoulder and telling her about what just happened. "Oh, bless you!" Aiko cried and kissed her on the jaw. "Here, take her and try it." Precious took the wet, limp rat from Aiko's lap and set her gently on the floor. At first, as Precious nuzzled the poor rat who barely looked alive, it seemed as if the dragon would not be able to repeat the spell. Then, with another boiling rumble from somewhere deep inside her belly, the fiery magic erupted out of the dragon's nose once more and engulfed Gracie. The magic danced around the white rat's body, looking almost as if it were trying to incinerate her. Then it sank in and vanished from sight. Nothing happened for a space of 3 tense breaths. Then suddenly Gracie sprang to her feet and shook herself. "Where are we?" asked Gracie as she looked around. Her fur was dry and fluffed, showing no sign of injury or disorientation. "What happened? How did I get dry all of a sudden? Wow, I'm so warm. I feel wonderful. Hi, Precious. Why are you staring at me like that? Is everyone okay? Has the baby been born yet?" "Gracie?" Aiko and Rosie said in near unison in relieved amazement. Rosie came up from the back and stood next to her best friend, still damp from the rain, and reaching out to Gracie. Gracie gave Rosie a quick lick on the face, then a hug, briefly chattering a final minute in rat language, then turned to the driver's seat. "Aiko!" cried Gracie in high-pitched happy squeak and jumped into her lap. "Ugh, you're all wet. Are we there yet? You might catch cold if you don't hurry up and get changed. I love you, by the way. I haven't told you that enough. I think I forgot something important. Can you tell me what that was? I'm trying very hard to remember and I can't. Why are you crying? Eek!" Aiko had used one arm to pick her up Gracie. They arrived at their sandwiches 20 minutes later, Gracie talking almost nonstop all the way. It's like the thing she had forgotten freed her mind and her mouth. Now she was this extra-friendly, highly communicative rat. As soon as the delivery truck was parked next to the dune lady, Precious opened the door and jumped out. She assisted 3 rats out of the back, and they scampered for the steps of Johnny's sandship. Then she and Aiko helped Johnny down, who doubled over and cried out as soon as his feet touched the wet ground. "Hurry up, we need to get out of here," Aiko said as she put Johnny's arm over her shoulder. "What about your ship?" Johnny wheezed as he tried to stand up straight. "I already hitched to yours," Aiko said over the suddenly increasing roar of rain hitting everything. There was a huge flash of lightning followed by a crack of thunder. Everyone was sucked through again by the time they managed to get inside. Precious had to shift into her girl form before she could even get into the door, causing water to run off of her in a hurry. This was because the water didn't shrink when she did. Johnny was ushered into the bathroom by Aiko, insisting that he strip and take a hot bath. He was all too happy to oblige. Heat was exactly what he needed. When he managed to get into the teeny bathtub and turned on the water to the right temperature, he was soon shuddering with relief. The heat didn't stop the pain altogether, but it helped a lot. Precious was bidden to stay with him and tell Aiko if Johnny needed help. Aiko grabbed some towels for herself and everyone hastily began the process of drying off. Then she left to get some dry clothes for herself and then to move the sandships to a safer location before anyone noticed that the delivery truck had been borrowed. He wished he could stretch out and lean back, but the bathtub only had enough room in it for him to sit back with his knees up or sit up cross-legged. So he leaned backward and sank as much of his body into the hot water as he could with his knees sticking out, trying to relax. "Ah!" Johnny cried as his belly cramped into a hard ball again. This one was even worse than the last one 5 minutes ago. "Daddy?" Precious asked anxiously, as she leaned over from her perch on the closed toilet lid and touched his shoulder. Suddenly he found himself buried down with everything he had before he even realized what he was doing, and vaguely he heard Precious shout for Aiko. Panting to catch his breath as the contraption let go, he placed his hand between his legs, hoping to feel the baby's head, and found nothing. Groaning miserably, he fell back, realizing this was going to take a while. An hour later, everyone was crowded into the teeny bathroom around the tub. His contractions were 2 minutes apart, and Aiko was poised to catch the baby as she kneeled between Precious and the toilet. "Push, push, push! You can do it! Good one! Breathe!" Aiko encouraged as Johnny squatted on his knees in the warm water, bearing down with everything he had, then letting his breath out. Goldie was waiting in the water by his knee to give him her moral support. The other 2 rats were sitting on the closed toilet lid, practically dancing with their excitement. Precious was kneeling by his side to Eiko's left, peeking into the water from around his shoulder. "Anything yet?" Precious asked Goldie, who was in the best position to see what was going on. "Not yet," Goldie replied after sticking her head underwater to peek between Johnny's legs, then looking up at the dragon. Johnny groaned and nearly wept with utter discouragement. It seemed like he'd been pushing forever with nothing to show for it. He felt so tired and, oh God, as he hurt so much. Then he was pushing again. He had to do it, even if he felt like giving up. The instinct was too strong to resist. Suddenly he felt an awful pressure and a terrible burning sensation. "I can see the baby's head!" Goldie piped excitedly. Feeling dazed, Johnny let his breath explode in an agonized cry. Then he felt Eiko place her hand between his legs and saw her smile. "Here, give me your hand," she said tenderly as she reached for his right hand that had been clutching the edge of the bathtub. When he let go, she guided his hand so he could touch his nephew for the first time. "Oh!" Johnny breathed in awe. Then another contraction came on and... "Ah!" He grabbed hold of the tub's edge again, took a deep breath, and pushed down hard. "Good one! Push, push, push!" Eiko encouraged him as she shifted back and to put her hands into the water. They all eagerly shouted encouragement for him to keep pushing, to not give up. He could do it. His female part stretched excruciatingly as the baby's head emerged even further. His head swam and he saw black spots on the edges of his vision. He let his breath out, shaking and weeping with pain and exhaustion. "One more push and his head will be out," Goldie told him with a comforting pat on his knee. Johnny nodded, took a deep breath, and pushed. "Okay, stop. Just breathe," Eiko told him as the baby's head came all the way out. "I need to check if the cord's around his neck." "Is he okay?" Johnny gasped apprehensively. He felt Eiko's fingers brush up against him as she leaned down to look at the baby. Eiko smiled and nodded. "He's fine. Deep breath and push again." He waited for the contraction, pushed hard, screamed, took another deep breath, and pushed. "One more should do it," Goldie said encouragingly. "He's nearly out." With a loud grunt, he bore down with the last of his strength, and his nephew shot out into the world. Johnny cried out in joy and relief as Eiko swiftly brought the baby out of the water and handed him to his uncle. He wrapped his arms around the chubby little boy and looked lovingly at him, thinking the baby looked a lot like his sister. Eiko used a rubber bulb to suction out the baby's nose and mouth. The baby grimaced and started to cry as his bluish skin started to turn pink. "He looks like a prune," Precious said uncertainly. "Is that normal?" "Completely normal," Eiko had answered as she smiled reassuringly at Precious. She used a thread to tie off the umbilical cord near the place where the baby's navel would be, then tied another thread an inch above that one. Unsheathing a small knife she had set between her knees, she used it to cut the cord between the two threads. Goldie jumped out of the water to the ledge of the tub and then onto Johnny's shoulder to get a better look at the baby. "He's perfect. Have you thought of a name for him?" "James, after his father," Johnny panted, is still out of breath from his efforts. "I think Elena would like that."